Okay, great. Everybody can see that. The main PowerPoint.
Yes.
Yep.
Good. Okay. Excellent.
Yes.
Um, Hi, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. Um, Sandy asked me to cover cradle to grave aspects of nuclear energy. And so I like that term because I've been using life cycle analysis and I'd like to see it go to grave. Um, but I've been working with with the Sierra Club. I was the energy liaison or chair for the Rincon group for about 10 years. And I've been very active with the Sierra Club and other groups like Greater Tucson Climate Coalition and Arizonans for Community Choice. Um, and is this screen big enough or does it work better if I do full screen on it?
Full screen would make it a little clearer.
Okay, let's see. How do I do that with all this stuff in the way? Um, Hold on a sec. Let's see.
Looks
Here
like
we
it might
go.
be at the very bottom right of the screen there.
Maybe view.
Um,
Not at the very bottom right, that bottom right corner, little logo there. Is that it?
that one. Fit slide to current window.
Oh,
No, this
I
one's
would hit on the
slideshow.
box, hit on the enlarge box.
Okay, how does that work? Is that working?
back to where
That's
you
awesome.
started. Good enough.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So my background in high school, I worked with a couple different high schools. I was in Coronado, and others were in Saguaro. We created the first wilderness group, pro wilderness group in Arizona, as 40 kids from two different high schools. And then, but later on, I switched over to energy issues because without us handling our energy issues, there will be a continual strain on lands, including wilderness. And we wrote a book later on the Palo Verde nuclear plant in 1979, and I was the one of the four authors, the main author. And we made perhaps the most accurate projection of a nuclear plant, long range projection for the costs. APS had projected 2.8 billion. We projected 6.1, and they came within 4% of our estimate at 5.9 billion. We used a regression analysis, and apparently APS used nothing but sales pitches to get the thing done. And since then, I've been promoting the solar transition, including energy efficiency and storage, and I have a website, www.safeenergyanalyst.org, and that's also at the final screen of this slideshow. Um, so, what I'll be covering this evening is nuclear power is too expensive to help solve our energy problems. Nuclear is bad for global warming directly and indirectly. And there are 19 of 20 steps of the nuclear cycle that produce CO2. And I'll get to that. And then I'll go into the second reason, which is basically the opportunity cost, which a lot of people may not understand that term, but we'll get into that. What I won't cover so much is environmental problems, water waste, nuclear waste, health problems, routine radioactive waste, civil liberties lost, terrorism, and accidents that make this a very poor option, in addition to being a poor option on an economic level. Um, so a friend of mine put this together. This is the sign for nuclear waste, essentially, that DOE adopted, but he added translation runaway nuclear energy causes financial death. And so, um, but so that everybody knows where energy comes from, because some people have said, all I know is that I plug something into a wall and whatever I plug in works. Um, Things like that. A power plant is where you generate the power, and I'll get into that a little bit more. It goes to a transmission substation. Then it goes out on transmission lines if it's a large centralized power plant. And then it goes to a power substation, which you'll see in your neighborhoods. If you look around, say like on, uh, I've seen them in all around in the Phoenix area and in Tucson area. And then it goes from the transformer to all the individual homes and businesses. And there's a transformer drum that you'll see up on the poles that are next to your home. And the other option is decentralized solar energy, where you would have solar panels on your home. It would still connect to the grid if you wanted to use the grid or feed back to the grid, like we do in our home. And so I'll move on to the next. This is how a gas plant
Hey,
works, essentially.
Russell, your
Yes.
your slides are not changing. Sorry.
Oh,
Yeah, Anna and I were just going, I think maybe
okay.
those
Well, I'll
slides are.
stop share and I'll go back into it.
Okay, yeah,
Um,
sorry, you were still on that for very, very first one.
okay. Let me get back. I'll get out of this completely. Uh, Go to here and do screen share again. Screen share screen, and I'll go to this one. Is that there now with the natural gas plant?
Yes.
Great. Okay, thank you for stopping me. So the other one that I probably missed then would be the one that you would want to see the most would be this one. Let's see, hold on a second. Okay, so this is where the power plant is. Can you see that power plant?
Yes.
That's changing. Okay. And then substation, and then going out in the high voltage lines to power substations in our neighborhoods, and then out to the house or the business that it goes to with a transmission. Well, these are distribution lines, these are transmission lines. And then there's a transformer drum that you'll see on some of the poles that'll handle multiple houses. And then it'll go to the house and or business. And so the next, let me see here. Okay, so then this is the Palo Verde Nuclear Generating Station. And you can see the reactor domes where I'm putting can you see my arrow as I move it along?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay, so these are the domes and these are the generator buildings. And then these are the 3 cooling towers per reactor so there are 9 cooling towers, and that's air that's going up, or it's evaporation going up into the air. And so Palo Verde uses the most water. I won't talk too much about water, but it uses about 0.77 gallons of water for every kilowatt hour that you pull from the plant. And that compares to gas, typically at around 0.4, and coal at about 0.6, and solar at 0 virtually, or very little water, because there's a tiny amount that's used for cleaning panels. So this is how the plant works inside that containment building. We go back, this building here, the reactor dome, there is right here the containment structure. It's a little bit different shape than Palo Verde's. They're all a little different. And this one has a reactor vessel right here, and that's part of the nuclear steam supply system, which is the NSSS. And that's this whole system in red, essentially. And then what that does is heat goes up to the top, it moves through here. There's a pressurizer, otherwise the pipes would blow apart because there's a lot of pressure. It interfaces with a heat exchanger and a steam generator. And that turns a turbine, and that turns a generator, electric generator. And then this open loop system is in blue. This goes out to the three cooling towers at every reactor, at each of the three reactors. And so this is an open cooling system, and this is a primary cooling system. Similar to a data center. I don't know if people are involved in the data center fights, but data centers almost all have primary coolant systems within the building that interface with each individual computer. And that goes out to a heat exchanger to an open system where they have evaporative cooling or they have a HVAC cooling. Evaporative cooling is a lot more efficient. So then this shows you a little bit more how complex it is. This is the Palisades nuclear reactor in Michigan that they're trying to restart now. It hasn't been functioning since 2022. And it has all the old analog panels, and it had economic problems. It was shut down for economic problems, so it'll probably have economic problems here. But this gives you a little bit of an idea, and these are all the items that are inside that, but you couldn't get it big enough to really show it. So atomic energy or nuclear energy, same thing. The cycle it's a very fossil fuel energy consuming cycle. And I'll go through those steps. The atomic energy cycle includes energy inputs to the power plant and to the fuel. In the power plant, there are 3 power plant energy cycle steps. And if anybody wants to interrupt me for a clarification, please do so. But you can hold other questions or put them in the chat. And I'll kind of go through this so it doesn't slow it down too much. But if there's any clarification question that you have, just interrupt me and ask your question or ask for clarification. There are 3 power plant energy steps. One is construction of the plant, and that's primarily powered by oil, some electricity too. There's operating the pumps, cooling the plant, powered by the nuclear plant itself, and sometimes outside grid energy. And as an example of that, Palo Verde, when it was first licensed, each reactor was 1,308 megawatts of power, but the net energy was 1,270. So 38 megawatts was dedicated to running the plant. So that's gross and net electrical design. And then another example would be when Palo Verde goes down for fueling or an unforeseen accident or unforeseen event, maintenance issue, Palo Verde has to be started by another power plant. And 2 of those plants are at the Sunt plant in Tucson. They're called black start plants. And those plants are specifically calibrated to most efficiently start Palo Verde up. And those are gas plants. So, and then at the end of that building cycle, there's decommissioning, which is again powered by oil. So you have these different options where each of these steps is not powered by nuclear or by, it's primarily by fossil fuel. So the next step is mining, which these days is 0.1% on average. When I first started working on nuclear and coal issues back in the 70s and 80s, it was 0.3%. So it's degraded to 0.1. And the next assay level is going to be 0.044 uranium. Uranium tends to go on assay levels, meaning there's a certain concentration at 0.3, and the next one's at 0.1, the next one's at 0.044, or 440 parts per million. And so milling then is 0.15% uranium, bringing it up to 70 to 80%. That's powered with oil. and it's also powered with coal to some degree, electricity to some degree also, which is general grid, mostly fossil fuel. Our grid, by the way, is about 75% fossil fuel in this region and on the national level. Conversion to uranium hexafluoride includes several substeps, and that's powered by oil primarily. And this is a mine, a uranium mine in Australia. And this is an ore mill. And this is yellowcake, uranium that's essentially about 70+% uranium. And of that uranium, 0.7% of that is U-235, which is the fissionable uranium that's fissionable from the get-go. And then 99.3% U-238 or uranium-238. So it's a little bit heavier than the U-235. And there's a little bit of U-232, but it's not worth even mentioning hardly. It's so small. Then there's conversion. And if you're a scientist, you might want to see the top couple of lines, but if you're not, you might just want to read the bottom two lines, which are converting milled uranium, that yellow cake that you saw, into a gaseous state so it can be enriched. And the enrichment is the seventh step. Take the milled uranium and do what I kind of said earlier, and you turn it into 3.5% U-235 before you put it into the power plant. But first you have to reconvert it out of a gaseous state into a solid state again. And that's the eighth step. And that's coming from coal. The other one, enrichment, is also coming from the Putuka coal plant, which is unregulated, virtually completely unregulated, and incredibly dirty. Fabrication is the ninth step, and that's powered by oil to mine and mill the zircaloy for fuel cladding. And then this is a picture, a drawing of the Portsmouth gaseous diffusion plant, complete with a swimming pool. There's that swimming pool again. And this is the gaseous enrichment chamber where it comes in here as yellow cake essentially, or converted, and then it's pushed into a chamber, and this is like a Gore-Tex, similar to a Gore-Tex type membrane, in that it lets through smaller atoms at a greater rate. So some of them bigger atoms get through, but more of the smaller atoms do. And then you have enriched 3.5 here, and you have depleted uranium down here, which is very low in uranium, in the U-235, I should say, but it's very high in uranium-238. So the 10th step is using the fuel in the reactor, powered by the nuclear fuel itself, with occasional use of electricity that's off-grid or from the grid, or backup diesel generators. And so that's oil and coal and gas. Then taking out the spent fuel and putting it into interim storage. These are the waste steps, the next steps. And the next one's isolating and guarding the waste for long-term storage. And that's primarily powered by coal and oil and gas. And then you have a next step. Well, spent fuel storage, that's a facility that is many feet deep, by about 20 to 30 feet deep, depending on the power plant and the spent fuel storage facility. And the water is infused with boron, which helps reduce the radiation that escapes through the water. And there's thanks for the bomb, sincerely, the Dingbat Liberation Army. Isolating and guarding waste and uranium mill tailings powered by oil. That's the 13th, and the 14th is guarding the waste of mill tailings powered by oil. And the 15th is guarding the waste, isolating it, and dealing with conversion machinery contamination powered by oil. And the next step is isolating and waste from the machinery that does the enrichment. There's a whole lot of machinery involved there, and there's a lot of contamination issues that they have to deal with. Isolating and guarding the waste from reconversion and then fabrication, and transportation of the waste, fortification of the transportation system powered by oil. And the last step, oops, another one. Nuclear waste problem. I don't know about you, but I don't want a world where my kids are growing up and there aren't any problems to solve. Um, so concurrently, the last step with with all of the steps, the building the plant, the waste steps, running the plant, is coordinating that whole thing and making sure that it's tracked, making sure that the police forces are on it if there's any kind of diversion attempt, or to get them from that from happening in the first place. Um, so, oops, let this long-term containment begin. And these are general emissions that I've studied about 15 nuclear life cycle analyses, which you can call cradle to grave studies, and they're they are missing a lot of they're missing three major categories, and they average about 65 um, grams of CO2 per kilowatt hour for nuclear energy, but they're missing so much in the short term that it comes to about 120. But they're also missing the long-term waste costs. They're discounting it with the economic discount theory, meaning that any costs in the future are discounted at a rate that after several decades becomes virtually $0. So they're essentially discounting a lot of that. And you're talking thousands of grams of CO2. And I'll tell you about one area, and that's where you take a mill tailings pile and you put it in pit A. And after 40 years, that pit starts to break down through earth movement, and the liner has to be replaced, or it will leak into the groundwater. So then you have a pit B. It's a brand new pit, and it's lined, and it's lined with clay and plastics. It's just this really durable liner that lasts about 40 years. You have to move that thing back and forth every 40 years. That's going to take a huge amount of CO2. I mean, you might say, well, maybe we'll have solar by then and we'll be able to run it with solar. But, it's probably not going to really, what I have not really read about an ancient society that has never broken down. And if our society, or when our society breaks down, they're probably going to go back to wood, then eventually coal, then eventually natural gas. So, Steve, you have a question?
Well, I just wanted to point out that depending on how you count it, I think concrete production independently is about the third biggest source of greenhouse gases um, um, worldwide, and it's like, I mean, it's not just the combustion heat; it's the materials chemistry releases CO2, and the same is true of steel production. It seems like there's a lot more concrete and steel per unit of electricity than there would be in any other power plant because of all the thickness of shielding and the miles of pipe. And also the water consumption, I think, is about, taking away the heat so it doesn't melt, and you have a lot more pumping energy. So I was just surprised you didn't mention, the construction phase as being an independent large source of greenhouse gases.
Yeah, it was the second step, the building of the plant. But yeah, that there it is. That's one of the things that adds to that 65 grams average in there are two meta studies that have been done, and meta studies are studies of studies. So there's one that's done that I can recommend to people who want to look into it. It's by Benjamin K. Sovacool, and you can look his name up and put life cycle analysis of nuclear, and you'll find it. And it's he's studied over 100 studies and weeded out a number of them that were too old or too biased or too um, undocumented. And then he took the better quality studies and he came to 66 or 65 grams per kilowatt hour, which seems kind of low compared to coal or gas, but it's, you know, 6 times that of hydro or 6, 7 times that of wind, and multiple times also of solar, which is going down as the efficiencies go up. So yeah, good points. Um, then the second thing, though, oops, I didn't spell opportunity right. There we go. Took care of that. So opportunity cost of nuclear energy. Just imagine this, an imagination exercise. Imagine food and electricity at triple the cost. Imagine 2 grocery stores, one in which you pay the regular price for your groceries, and another store in which you pay 3 times the price for the same groceries because they have better marketing or they're more attractive, whatever. Now imagine paying 3 times the price for your electricity. That's the situation created when nuclear power is used to produce electricity. Some people argue that nuclear energy should be a part of any future energy mix, with some even claiming that nuclear energy can help save the planet. Both groups are wrong. The cost of producing electricity with new nuclear power is so high that it actually forces utilities to produce more fossil fuel electricity. The reason is that every dollar you spend on new nuclear energy buys you less than 1/3 the amount of electricity produced by solar energy with battery backup, robust battery backup. To make up that difference, when a lot of the nuclear plants that you had on the boards didn't come through because they cost too much and they were canceled, like every single wave in France and the United States, every single wave has had more cancellations of reactors than completed reactors, far more. So to make up that difference, the utilities have to buy more power from the grid or more energy from the grid, which currently produces about 75% of it by burning fossil fuels. So that's it's an amazing thing. Not only will you spend more for electricity, you will also have to have that much less to spend on other necessities. In addition, you'll be contributing to the warming of your community and to the generation of pollution affecting your family's health. It's foolish to pay triple the cost for your grocery. It's equally foolish to buy electricity produced by nuclear energy at triple the cost of electricity from solar with battery backup. And it's even worse when you compare it to energy efficiency. Let's do the right thing for our ecology and our wallets. Let's embrace the solar transition. If not, we might put on a good show for some aliens. If you have any questions, comments, any questions, I'd be happy to go into them.
Thank you, Russell. I just want to remind folks we do need to wrap it up here soon just because we have more on the agenda, but it does look like you have maybe 2 questions here.
Okay, Robert?
Okay, the other thing that you sort of got into, but not totally, is now the nuclear industry is asking for government subsidies because it is so costly to build a plant. The other thing is, for decades, they've had this thing called the Price-Anderson Act, which basically uses the government as a backstop in ensuring nuclear plants, because no one wants to build a nuclear plant and have to buy the level of insurance that they need to cover any catastrophe, any serious catastrophe.
Yes, good points. There's a really good study by Fairwinds that includes that Price-Anderson Act in their subsidy analysis, and they say that nuclear is already getting 6 to 7 cents per kilowatt hour of subsidy, which is far more than what solar has ever gotten, or any other energy form except possibly um, biofuels from corn. But yeah, subsidies are a major issue. There are a lot of other major issues that I don't have the time to go into enough. But yeah, I could at a future time if people
Okay,
want me
thank
to
you.
do that. Thank you. Stephen?
Yeah, hi, Stephen Sondheim here. Russ, I've never seen such a good presentation of the corollary costs, the costs and the energy uses and the CO2
Oh,
used
thanks.
to bring it about. That's just amazing. And by the way, you mentioned Fairwinds. A guy named Arnie Gunderson, who's a former nuclear
Mhm.
engineer, put out a little 2-minute sort of cartoon which I put in the chat. And it talks about two things in particular. And Nancy, this is for you. By the way, Nancy, you're very brave to come on and hear these arguments. Um, he basically says, and he documents it, that it just costs too much.
Mhm.
And the
Good.
most important thing is that it'll be until the mid 40s before it can affect climate change because it takes too long. So it's just anyway, fantastic presentation. And
Well, thank you.
what would you say the total percentage of contribution to CO2 is? I mean, they're claiming it's completely clean, and that's not true. But
Yeah, well,
is it a
it's
significant
probably
percentage?
in the long run, it'll be in the thousands of grams per CO2 because you have to move these tailings piles back and forth. Or if you don't do that, they will contaminate our water sources wherever the
Right. So
piles
my
are.
my estimate in general is it's 20 or 30% uh, as much CO2 as fossil, but that's
I think
never
it's going to
mentioned.
be more in the long run. And if you
Mhm.
go on the opportunity cost basis, it is more because
Okay,
the
thank you.
opportunity and you can look into the first article in my website at safeenergyanalyst.org covers that issue and that second issue in more depth. It's a 3-page article, and I got help from a professional editor on it, so it's very readable. And yeah, I recommend looking at that, and you will see that this actually has a higher impact because it takes away the money from what could have been built that would have saved us a lot of energy that would have produced a lot of energy or saved us energy through energy efficiency. And so you get 3 times the solar for every dollar that you spend on nuclear. If you spend that instead on solar, you get 3 times. And if you spend that money on energy efficiency, you get like 5 to 10 times the amount of energy that cut back that replaces the need for doing energy production, even with solar. Thanks. Horst?
Yeah, and also there's been a Dwayne put a question in the chat. If you could
Okay.
summarize what's wrong with SMRs, small modular nuclear reactors.
Oh, yeah, on small modular reactors, I have a model and it's got 30 different cost factors in it. I've never seen a study that has that many in it. Even Charles Komanoff's work, which was really well done. We used his regression analysis in our nuclear study. But yeah, small modular reactors, instead of costing 33 cents per kilowatt hour to deliver, get delivered to your door with your meter, are going to cost about 40 to 50 cents per kilowatt hour. And the industry likes to say that small modular reactors have an economy of scale. That means number of units that you build, but they never mention the economy of size. And the economy of size is how big the unit is. And when you have a really big giant reactor, it has a huge amount of economy of size in there that will dwarf the economy of scale. And if they're really interested in economy of scale, they'd be coalescing around 1 to 3 different designs. but instead they have about 27 different designs that I've read about. And so the economy of scale won't even kick in for decades if it kicks in at all.
Can we do kind of like a lightning round with quick questions and quick answers, just because
Okay,
like for the last
fine,
four
sure.
people to speak and so we can get to the other stuff.
Okay, I guess Horst.
Yeah, been at two of the three meetings that the Corporation Commission has had on nuclear power, and I'd be happy to offer a talk next month, letting you know what the thinking is and how all the things that Russell and others have mentioned are the drawbacks that they totally ignore. But I did want to mention one quick thing is 5 states have come up with a memorandum of agreement with the U.S. Department of Energy to be considered for storage in their states of nuclear waste. So I'll leave it at that so there's more time for others.
Okay, thank you. Nancy, Muse.
Yes, thank you. I'm overdosing on this tonight because I just got off of the, excuse me, NRC hearing for the
Mm,
restart of 3 Mile Island before I came here. And talk about a dog and pony show.
mhm.
People from the industry. I mean, I'm really doomed. I'm going to have to look over my shoulder because they let me speak 3 different times. I was speaking off script. I did not have a script, but I did not sugarcoat my words. I had plenty of practice since the late 1970s. I
Right.
joined Sierra Club in 1980, but I've gone to numerous NRC meetings at Brown, about the Browns Area nuclear plant and the TVA nuclear program over the years. And all I had to do was just say the same thing I'd said for the last 50 years. It still applied. But I just want to say, if anybody has a chance to please go and find out where you can comment about the 3 Mile Island nuclear plant, they are still repeating all of the same ridiculous lies about carbon
Mhm.
emissions and safety of the dry casks where the waste is stored on site in a very precarious area. And because I don't want to talk too long, I'll shut up now, but there was so much. It was amazing that they
Mhm.
continue the same lies over and over.
Yeah, they're doing the same thing at the Duane Arnold nuclear plant in Iowa that I was just flown out to give testimony on. Yeah, it's just been a ridiculous joke. They're undermining democracy is another thing that they're really doing with this foisting these projects on with no real public input in a meaningful level. Stephen?
Sorry, my hand's still up. I didn't mean to take it down. It is true that they completely ignore some of the challenging statements like what you've made. They just gloss over it and say that's not true. Uh,
Hmm. Okay.
so evidence with numbers should help, although they're going to
Yes,
ignore it anyway,
it
but it
should.
should help. Okay, thank you.
The,
I'll
the
lower my hand.
second, Stephen.
Yeah, there's a danger in phrasing these arguments just in terms of monetary cost. Uh, there's a great book called The Heat Will Kill You First, and it talks about the damage that we have already done to the planet, to the number of species that we wiped out, uh, and so, I guess you have to figure money in there somewhere, but there are these externalities that are just not being priced in.
Yes, that's a good point. And it's just to kind of wrap up here, I guess, it's really important to note that these costs, when you go with something expensive, like the people who say we should do all of the above, that means you're going to do a whole bunch of things that keep you from doing the cheaper things. You should not you should not ever be doing all of the above. It would be like a family in poverty going half time to say Paris across the street or down the road and going halftime to a grocery store. You don't do all of the above. You go to the grocery store that serves you the lower cost food till you get out of poverty, and then it just doesn't make any sense to do all of the above when half of the items are way more expensive than the other half of the items. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you, Russell.
Yeah, thank you, Russell. Appreciate your
Yes,
knowledge,
great
time, and for
presentation.
bringing in the crowd.
Thanks.
Great.